Welcome everyone to another episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. I am super excited about my guest who is joining us in the ring today. We are going to dance. We're going to have fun. We're going to go a few rounds. But before I introduce him, let me just remind you that this is really our platform to talk about redefining leadership, talking about how we choose to show up, how we choose to serve others, and that responsibility in that space. We are also going to dig deep and have the courageous conversations. This is our space to get really vulnerable, to get really real, and to just have some fun and have a great conversation. So with that, it is my absolute honor to introduce my guest. He is just this brilliant powerhouse that I had the opportunity to meet as I was stepping into the space of Brendan Burchard's mastermind. And so James and I have met some time ago. And before I give you the full background, let me just say hello and welcome my dear friend, James Williams, to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the honor of having me on your amazing show. I'm touched. Thank you.
And I am so touched to have him. And I know most of you will just fall in love with his accent as well as just the light he shines. So before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about why I adore this guy so much. After leaving a 12-year career that was no longer fulfilling him or showcasing all he knew he had to give, James started his chapter 2. I love that. He's stepping into a brand new chapter and is making amazing things happen. He got back in touch with his passion for people, human potential, and impacting the lives of others. In following his passions, striving for mastery, and realizing his potential and performance, he now uses those systems and structures to be the catalyst in the lives of those he serves. And we are going to talk about that a little bit. He is a certified high-performance coach. He works with entrepreneurs to reach their highest levels of performance and potential in everything they do. He has spent the last few years working with female entrepreneurs one-on-one and through group programs as he runs with his wife and business partner, Emily Williams, in pursuit of a life better than his dreams. And there's so much juiciness to how they play together and what he's learned. And the fact that he is a man working with female entrepreneurs more than anything, I find fascinating and really want to hear some perspective there. As one half of the power couple, James is also passionate about working with couples who experience the strain that entrepreneurs can have on a relationship. As with any good team, James believes our closest relationships can have massive impact on our ability to thrive. Wow. Told you this guy's a powerhouse. Once again, just honored to have you here. James, just talk a little bit about your journey to chapter 2.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I think that until you get into your chapter 2, you don't really know your journey. And it's for me, I've realized that stepping into something before you know what it is or how it's going to work is really important, right? And that was so true for me. All I knew that there was a niggle and it wasn't right for me. And, you know, back then in that 12-year career, which was fantastic, by the way, there was a point where I was saying the words, there's an element of this which is toxic for me. It's not right for me. And then I realized into this journey looking back that actually I was toxic for that environment. It just didn't fit within me anymore. Taking full responsibility for it. And I realized that the real catalyst for me, and when I realized that was meeting Emily, because I was a big thinker and I was always trying to do that next thing, but it was within the confines of the bubble that I was living in this career in television. I was trying to reinvent myself all the time, you know, learning new skill sets, you know, working in different departments, but I was very extrinsically motivated. It was, what could I do to impress someone else or to earn more money? And those extrinsic motivations were very short-lived. They didn't fill me up at all. And meeting Emily, someone who is so driven and so much I don't care whether it's possible or not, that's what I want to do kind of person. And I was like, wow, who is this woman, right? And she lit that part of me up. And then I saw the bubble that I was living in and realized, well, no wonder I can't come to a place of finding what's for me, because I'm looking within a constrained space. I'm looking within this bubble and it's just around and round and round. So once I was able to burst that bubble and look out, initially it's scary because it's like, wow, that's a big world with lots of opportunities. Can I do it? Right. It was just thinking, do you know what? All I know is that this bubble isn't for me and it's for other people. And it was for me yesterday, but for now I need to do something else. So I took that leap and I got a coach at the time, and he kind of challenged me to give me the date to leave. And I did. And really at that point, all it was about was getting to know me and what it was that lit me up from the inside, what it was that made me feel happy about myself, right? Made me feel like I was doing something that I could just get into and get into that kind of, that flow, that kind of in the zone feeling of just loving what I was doing, regardless of knowing what was going to happen from it. And that's what happened. I got into that chapter 2. But like any chapter 2, then the old ego, the old self comes back and is like, wait a minute, what are you doing? How's it going to work? Right. I don't know if anyone out there has taken a DISC assessment, but I'm a very high I. So I'm a very much a process person. So I'm like, need to figure out all the steps in between. So that guy kept coming back. And so the first part of chapter 2 was very much really excited, doing what I want to do. And then, oh my God, freaking out. And what do I want to do? And so that was the beginning of that journey. But really it was discovery, right? It was about just trying to discover what lights me up. And it was people. I'd recognized those 12 years in television, the moments that really lit me up were the moments where I was working with people to come up with an amazing result, whether it be for them or for me or whatever. I loved people. And any time in my life that anything amazing's happened, that I've been lit up, that I've moved forward, that I've excelled, it's been with people. And it's been about creating something with people. So I just knew that was the way forward for me into my chapter 2.
Wow, that's really amazing. And I will tell you that if you get time to really get to know James, you will know that he has a high I. He's very much a very people-oriented, influencing kind of, he's just got this incredible energy. It was one of the things that drew us to each other. In fact, we were standing in line signing up for our mastermind and we were just like, oh my gosh, got in this great conversation. But what's interesting about what you've talked about in terms of your journey, there's a couple things I really want to dig into. One is you went through that discovery process. I think it's interesting that you talked about while you enjoyed the 12-year career you had in television and what you were doing and how things were moving, you noticed 2 things. One, not only did that environment become toxic for you in some capacities, but what I found most interesting in what you said was the awareness and the opportunity to acknowledge that you were toxic for that environment as well. And I really want to delve into that a little bit because I think there's so much power in our own awareness for how we're choosing to show up in a space or what energy we're bringing. And so twofold, I want to talk a little bit about what some of your initial discovery was, or maybe some of that aha that didn't maybe feel all so awesome when you realized that you were contributing to that toxicity. And as you started to go through that discovery process, not only did you meet Emily, who is a force, let me tell you, she is a force. I've done some of her programs. So there's that opening, but what started to, when the ego kicked in? So you've got this awareness around your role in the toxic situation. And now you're starting to get momentum and move forward. And all of a sudden that ego comes in. What's some of that fear and some of that self-talk that started to arise through that process? Because like I said, I know we've played in space a little bit and that always shows up, right? And so I'd love to delve in a little bit around what that was like for you.
Yeah, it was, when you realize, first off, the first thing that I realized was that I was blaming, right? Things were happening to me, right? I realized that I was blaming everything else outside of me for being unhappy, right? This environment's not right, or these people don't respect me, or, something's not right that's outside of me. And the moment that I shifted from blame to taking full responsibility, what happened was I empowered myself to do something about it, right? And that feels so much better because blame is just all about ego. And I realized there was a space towards the end of that career where I was in a section of that job that, it had changed a lot, and it, wasn't allowing me to be who I wanted to be, or so I thought. It wasn't allowing me, was the way I thought about it at the time. Then I realized that it was just me. I was choosing not to show up fully in that environment anymore. And the first shift for me was when I realized my connection with people, because I chose to follow my heart, which was I reached out to a mentor, someone who I guess was reflecting the best side of me back at me. And that mentor was a guy at the place I used to work, who was just so free of ego and so much about service. I saw in him everything that I knew I wanted to come out of me again. And so I ended up working in a different section of that job, because I thought, well, I'm in a weak place right now, and I need to find some strength. So I put myself in that environment. So I basically surrounded myself with people that were reflecting a bit more of what I wanted to see from myself. And then something really interesting happened. I was very, very happy. And I was doing the same kind of work. I was really, really happy. I loved the environment, and I knew that this wasn't for me. But I was really happy. So I knew, okay, wait a minute, I'm showing up now the best version of me. I'm really, really happy. So now I'm making a choice from the best version of me, right? I'm not making it from this guy blaming everyone who's down in the dumps and just wanting to live for the weekend. I now was actually having quite a good time, which made me get in touch with what was actually lighting me up. And I thought, okay, I was looking at what Emily was doing, and she at the time was registered into B School, Marie Forleo, and I was going through it with her, like reading all the coursework, and I was thinking, man, this is awesome. This is a direction that I could somehow, point service in some way. And at the time, I didn't know what that would be, but it's been a fighting journey. And I didn't get over blame in just that moment. It wasn't just a one-stop shop. Now I'm fixed and I don't blame anything else, but I take full responsibility. That was a journey, and still is. I'll be honest with you, it still is. But like anything, once you've realized that shift between blame and taking full responsibility, it's just about catching it every time. Mm-hmm. And so then into the journey that was up and down and the messy middles, right? It's not progress unless it's messy, right? That's what they say. Every time I hit one of those lows and I blamed something, I found that the shift between blame and then taking full responsibility was just getting shorter. The moment I took full responsibility, it didn't mean it was easy to then come out of that, but it meant that it was up to me. And sometimes that in itself felt hard, because the initial part of chapter 2, I didn't know how to direct what I was going to be doing. I knew I wanted to be into personal development. I knew I wanted to be a coach of some kind. But at the time when I first left, really I was training. I was learning about the online space. I was helping Emily with the website and all of the business stuff, but I didn't have an actual purpose yet. So even though I was taking full responsibility, it was a constant struggle to move out of that place of blame, because there was more things to blame. And when you're a bit tired and confused, and you've moved from working in an environment that is so structured for you, you don't have to do anything but show up and do your work, suddenly to being an entrepreneur where you've got to decide what to do, when to do it, and if it doesn't work, it's down to you.
Right.
That's a big change.
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family at all, so I didn't really know what that felt like. So it was very, very different. But when you take full responsibility, what happens is, yes, it's messy and it's hard, but the progress is quick when you take full responsibility, because every pain, every time, every kind of growth edge that comes your way, the moment you go over that growth edge, all you see is another range that you can move past, another step.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what happened, and happened really quickly. I think the first year of that chapter 2, I feel like I progressed more in that year than I had in probably the 12 years before. Yeah. Perfectly honestly,
Well, and isn't it interesting? Because I know I talk to clients all the time where they ask me, so how quickly does it happen? And my response is, as soon as you get out of your own way.
Yeah.
And so the other piece around that is that shift from blame to taking responsibility, right? And I think it was Deepak that said it first, and Wayne Dyer said it as well, and others. And I think even Brendan's been known to say it is the worst 4-letter word in our English language is the word they. They did this. It's that shifting and pointing everything outside of us instead of saying, what is mine to control? And it sometimes is just your reaction, right? Or it's just how you choose to show up. And what's interesting, and I really would love to experience one of these with you, because there was 2 phrases you used, and I have like a bazillion questions firing in my head right now, but there were 2 questions that I want to understand what that really looked like for you. You talked about the messy middle. And I would love to experience what that, because I think sometimes people see entrepreneurs, especially that have had quick progress. And I know we've had some, both of us have had some very quick turns on things, and people go, oh, you've got it all figured out. You're this, you're that. And they think they see something based on a package or a branding or the way we choose to show up, because we don't do that blame. We don't play that victim mentality. We try to create more awareness around that. Yet there's still those messy middles. And some of those messy middles get really icky. They get really stuck. And so I'd love to talk about one of your experiences through the messy middle to what you called that growth edge. Because I love that phrase of that growth edge, as if there's that busting through that bubble. It's that, you've seen the cartoon where the guy's chiseling through the rock, and he gives up just before he's about to break through. And there's something really powerful in how we take on that messy middle and work through that growth edge that's opportunity. So I would love if you would care to dance a little bit.
Yeah, let's
to get into one of your messy middles and know what that really looks like for an entrepreneur who's out there kicking some serious butt.
Well, for those that look at a journey like mine and Emily's, or mine and yours, that see the fast progress, all that means is that we've failed a lot of times in a very short period of time, right? The difference between those at the very top, crushing it out there, is that they've just failed more than you. That's all it is. And I think Brendan says it, the highest trait of the world's highest performers, or the number one trait of the highest performers in the world, is the ability to make a decision.
Right.
Whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision isn't the point. It's, I try, I get it wrong. 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 I try, oh, I get it right. Yeah. Because every time we make a decision, we're moving. And even if we make a mistake or it failing is like, oh, let's not do it like that next time. Or there's something to be learned.
Right.
And now you've got more knowledge, and now it's just move on. So during that first year, this is something really important I learned, is that I can't control my reactions, because my reactions are something that come from my subconscious. They're part of my programming that I'm working diligently to reprogram. Right? Neuroplasticity says that, for the rest of our lives, we can re-network and reprogram our behavior to fit what it is that we're dreaming to become. But what I can control is my response to my reaction, right? And that's the timeline, is how much time between reaction and then response. So I might react based on my programming, but then how quickly I then respond in a way that serves me, that's the biggest lesson I've learned. And I think that in that first year, some of those response times were slow, right? I got down there, it got really messy. Ego came out, blame came out. Everyone was evil. I was just this innocent thing and playing victim in the hole. And then I shook myself off and I realized, wait a minute, I have the power to respond in a way that actually gets me out of this hole, and not only gets me back on track, but gets me over the next edge, which is higher than where I started. And that's my responsibility. That's my ability to respond. Once I recognize my ability to respond in any way that I choose to, then it's just about switching that as fast as possible. And every single day I work on shifting that responsibility faster, because no matter how well things go, outside of me, I have no control. We can do everything right. We can have the perfect launch. We can be amazing to everyone. We can have the best program in the world. We can do everything right. And then one day something comes along and just throws a cog in the wheel just to test us, right? Oh, you're doing really well. Let's see what happens when I do this. And that's when the work shows up. And I think the other lesson from that first 12 months, that first part of chapter 2, was that the work that I do on myself shows up when the challenge hits. And when those moments of down in the ditch happened, if it took me a long time to get out, it was just because I wasn't doing the work enough.
Yeah. And it's really powerful. I love that framing of response ability, right? Because it is our ability to change that. And there's a powerful piece that I hope everybody really heard was, while we all have reactions, we all have stories, we have experiences, we have life, things that have happened to us that have created our centers of belief and how we choose to react to things, or how we innately, I should say, react. The fact that the reaction itself, now that's not always something we demonstrate, because the response then is our choice of what we're going to project as a result of that. But that difference between reacting and responding is such a powerful frame that I really hope everybody's taking a moment to digest that, because I think that's where people let go of the opportunity to take responsibilities. They're like, it's a reaction. I can't help my reactions. Yes, and if you only allow the reaction to be what's occurring and there's no response in terms of where you choose to show up and step forward as a leader and own your stuff, that's where the big disconnect is. And I think that's where we see a lot of entitlement, we see a lot of things, is because then you get stuck in that blame game that says, wow, it's how I'm wired. It's just a reaction. I can't control what I think. I can't control what happens in terms of, and there's the yes piece, but the bigger part is the and that you're talking about, which is that bridge between what shows up for us emotionally, where our triggers are at, where our stories are at, how we react, our hard wiring, all of that's packaged there, and the bridge to what am I going to choose to do as a result. And I think that choice, because one of the things that I find so fascinating about what you do is twofold. One, the fact that you and Emily went through your own journey to really build a business together, which at first was not something you guys were like, okay, don't think that's where we want to go. And so what I think I'm curious about, and for those of you that know, we've talked a lot about moving into that bigger imagine if space. Did you ever imagine that you would be building this amazing framework that you and Emily are building, and that a majority of your work would be with female entrepreneurs and couples in terms of how you get to show up and shine your most awesome light? Was that ever an imagine if for you? And how did you fully step into that space and open that wide open?
That's a great question. No, I mean, there's a point, there's a section to that. I mean, we were talking before the call started about this, and I knew that my path ahead was communication and development with people. I love people, and I love to be the catalyst that digs out all the gold from people, right? But how that was going to work, I didn't know. And even when I left and started this chapter 2, I didn't know. I just unapologetically went forward into the midst without having a clue what was going to happen, which for a high eye is really hard to do, because I'm the guy that looks above the trees before he heads into the forest to work out the best path.
Right.
But I didn't. I just went storming into the forest with a baseball bat going, what is going to come my way? Okay. That's why it was tough.
At least you were prepared.
Yeah. And so, but what happens is when you allow your intrinsic values and what lights you up to lead you, when you allow that to happen, something really magical happens and unexpected happens. And you go from being pushed by your motivators, which was, I want to get out of this bubble, and I don't like this anymore, and it's extrinsically motivating, and I'm not in touch with myself, and I need to get out. You go from being pushed by those motivators to then getting pulled by your vision. And being pulled by your vision is so much lighter and easier. It just happens. And so so I left, and of course, Emily, by that point, I'd been helping her, but really she was the visionary. She was building this business. And it was really nerve-wracking for her to let me in fully to this business, because it was her baby.
Right.
And so, initially I was training myself to be a coach, and I was doing my own training. But when I actually came on board and started speaking to the clients, that was hard for Emily, because it was her baby. But she believed in me as much as I believed in her. And so how this actually first happened was that Emily had a group program at the time. And it was female entrepreneurs, and she offered a call with me because a lot of them were curious. How are you working with your husband? How does that work? How does he see your vision? Because you dream really big and you're investing really big, and he lent you his credit card to invest in all these things. And how is that? How is that? I want to know. So they wanted to just talk to me as a husband of a female entrepreneur. That was the first step. And so I used to get on these calls with the group program ladies, one-on-one. We called them like office hours initially. And it was 15 minutes. And I would just talk to them about, they were just asking me, they were basically wanting to know, why is my husband being like this? And he doesn't get it. But he loves me and he wants to support me, but he's wrapping me in cotton wool. And I just want to do my thing. And so we would talk about that, and I give my perspective. And then those sessions turned kind of into coaching, because throughout my own life, you know, health and fitness and personal development were always a part of my life. I just had never been trained to coach in them. So those conversations turned kind of like coaching sessions, and they became what we called laser coaching. And you know what? I always had a very good relationship with my mother and my father as well. But I just grew up very, very, you know, had a great relationship with my mum. Always had a great relationship with women. And I guess, and me and Emily had a great relationship. I guess I just really loved talking to these female entrepreneurs because they reminded me of Emily in a lot of ways. They were very passionate, very purposeful, but they had this interesting view that a lot of them had this interesting view that they weren't allowed to be successful, that there was a role that they were supposed to live up to. And it was really interesting to a lot of them that you could be a mum and an entrepreneur. And you know, the world's changing. Like, everyone gets now the opportunity to be successful, be a parent, and do everything they want to do. But that model of a family unit, that model of a relationship doesn't really exist. It's kind of something we're trying to make up now. And so what I love about female entrepreneurs is that they're so open to development. They're so open to another opinion. They're so open to trying things out and going another way. There's a lot less ego from the outside. And so I just really resonated with that. And before I knew it, a few years had gone by. I then got certified as a high performance coach, and I'm running coaching calls and having one-on-one clients with these awesome female entrepreneurs of anything from early 20s to late 50s. And it's just been incredible. And it's actually made me a better coach, coaching guys.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so fascinating because there's something you and I have in common, because a lot of my clients tend to be men. And people ask the same question, why don't you work with a lot of women? And I love working with women. I love working with entrepreneurs. But there's something about bringing that other side of the equation and bringing a different perspective. And I tell people a lot of times, I said, a lot of the guys I work with are corporate, men have very strong egos and personalities and whatever. And I grew up in that environment. I played in all, I'm an engineer by background. I played in those environments my entire corporate career. But it's that space of acknowledging I can go toe to toe at their level, and I bring something else. What's nice about why I work with the men I do is because I'm not competition to them. I'm not a threat. I'm not in a space. I can be someone that can nurture an environment that makes them feel safe. And I think that's exactly what you're doing from a perspective with these women is, and again, because I know you and I know that kind of openness that you carry, you bring such a different perspective that as women are trying to balance out, how do I be a wife and a mom and have this environment, you get to bring a perspective that helps them maybe have conversations that have always been challenging, or to stand in their voice because of the way that you support Emily and the way that you guys are building this business together. I think it's such a beautiful thing to watch that is really a space where it's becoming your niche. It's becoming this space where you really stand out, because there's not a lot of people with your background and what you do that would willingly go into that space and be so open and be so able to create that space that feels safe and offer something that maybe they're not getting when they're only working with other female coaches and other things from that perspective. So it's incredibly beautiful, this synergy that you and Emily have created in terms of how you're lighting up. And I've watched the growth of some of the people through your programs, right? They're just knocking it out of the park. And so just a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for, and like I said, I've done one of the programs because I wanted to experience it. And it's just so phenomenally put together. There's just all of such thought and consideration to all the pieces inside of there. And so I'm curious, as you guys have really gotten into this rhythm, I mean, you guys have this synergy that's just electric. What's on the horizon for you guys? What's the next big imagine if that you're playing around with? Where is it that you see the vision? Because I know you guys have a bigger dream. I know it's getting bigger. I can feel it. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we talk about all the time. And when you're around Emily Williams, you can't help but start to dream even bigger. And I thought I was a big dreamer, but Emily's she dreams pretty big, but it happens, right? So what's on the horizon? Well, we are, we're looking at I Heart My Life as more of a movement than a business, because there's so many facets of impact, right? I remember having this conversation with one of our coaches that, it's all about how many people can you impact. And of course, we have different programs that are aimed at different types of entrepreneurs, depending on where they're at in their businesses. We have the starter programs, the I Heart coaching, and then high level programs. But we want to know it's more than just coaching, right? It's how can you have an impact directly or indirectly to affect as many people as possible? Because the more people that can rise, the more reason there is to smile on this earth. Because right now there's a lot of reasons to feel kind of a bit freaked out. You have to be very careful watching the news. And so I guess starting with just the business, it's now really a point where we want to create some more streamlining in our business. So we have our main coaching program, I Heart Coaching, which is just phenomenal. It's amazing, and it's going over a year now. But Emily drew out this this kind of mind map the other day of what she wants to do, and me too. What do we want? Where do we want to go? And how do we want to impact this? So the way we see our journey as a couple and as a business is, I see it like a bit like a tree. So the trunk of that tree is as Emily and me, and I Heart My Life is just one major branch off of that tree. Another branch is my high performance coaching. And then within that, there's intersections. So I will always be a part of I Heart My Life and a coach within the programs. And then Emily she's just got a book deal, which is, well, fingers crossed, we'll get a book deal with Hay House. It's happening. It's on the horizon right now. So keep an eye out for that. And there are, there's books my side. There's the I Help My Life show, which is America Out Loud radio station we've got going right now. There's something happening that side for me as well, which I'll give you more details when I have it. So there's radio and podcast. There's the, obviously I Help My Life and the coaching. Then next year we're doing our very first standalone event. Again, details to be confirmed, but that's going to be, we've always done events at the end of our programs, which have been amazing, but we've always dreamed of doing this standalone event, which is like a TED Talk style event with major speakers, full female entrepreneurs. So that's actually in the works. That's being planned right now. So that's looking amazing. There is stationary lines. There's all sorts of things happening, right? But it's all about, I Heart My Life is really about living a life better than your dreams. It's all about, well, how can we think bigger than what's possible? And I think one of the best quotes that I've ever heard that sums up how we like to try and think about our business is, and we heard this from Robin Sharma actually, is that the highest performers in the world out there, they hit the targets that no one else can hit. But the true visionaries hit the targets that no one else sees. Mm-hmm. So based on the last few years and what's happened in our life, and knowing that there's no way I could have imagined what's going on right now a few years ago, I couldn't have imagined it. So now I think to myself, well, I'm pretty creative and I've got a pretty big imagination, but I don't think I can imagine as big as I'm capable of.
Yeah.
So,
well, I have to say, I mean, that's just I'm sitting here getting chills listening to you talk because I know how big you guys dream. I love that you just quoted Robin Sharma. He is one of the masterful gurus that we get the opportunity, and his whole theory around standing on the shoulders of giants. He is one of those giants in my world. I just
he is.
adore Robin. He everything he stands for. And so what's interesting about that is, one, I love the seed you just planted, because James, we most definitely need to have you come back. I want to hear more about some of these things that are uncovering. And I want to make sure, because we are getting close to needing to wrap this up, which I'm so sad because I could just keep doing this all day.
Goes so fast, right?
Oh my God, it goes so fast. And it's like, oh, there's so much stuff I want to continue to dig into. As you start talking about this movement, though, and I love the idea of a movement. When you are starting to look at a one-to-many model, it needs to be something that has legs of its own and can really start to plant seeds on a much broader level. And so as I think about that, and there's people that they're probably salivating right now going, ooh, that sounds so just wow. How do they find out more about this movement? What's the best way for them to reach out and have a conversation with you, or reach out and connect to the work that you and Emily are doing? Because like I said, as someone who's experienced what you do, it is absolutely powerful and beautiful. And and honestly, in all transparency, I joined because I wanted to see what you were doing. I so admired it and watching you. And then I got into the program, which I did the I Heart Money program. It blew me away. It was absolutely one of the most powerful programs I did last year. And so I highly encourage people to reach out. What's the best way that they can find out more?
Yeah, that's iheartmylife.com is the website, and everything we're doing is on there. And there's still more that needs to be added. Actually, we're a bit behind on adding the I Heart My Life show. So iheartmylife.com, you can visit. I Heart Money Live is actually launching again very, very soon. It's such a powerful program because there's a lot of people have got a lot of mindset challenges around investment. And of course, investing in yourself is such an important thing. So iheartmoneylive.com, you can go to and check that out, but it's all under iheartmylife.com as well.
Yeah.
And also check out the I Heart My Life show, which is on YouTube. We've been interviewing some awesome people on that. I interviewed Mel Abraham, who we know recently, who just crushed it. And I'll be interviewing Brendan soon as well. So that'll be really exciting.
Can't wait.
And then I'm on jamesrswilliams.com, or you can find me again at iheartmylife.com. So check us out.
Yeah, and I will tell you, there's a lot of resources out on that site. Their branding, their marketing, everything they put together is just it's beautiful. It's powerful. I get mesmerized watching everything that you guys put forth. And so as we are closing out, first, I must just say, such deep gratitude for you joining me today. I absolutely adore you. I adore Emily. I love everything you guys are doing. I feel so blessed that our paths crossed. And I still remember that initial moment we met. And there was I just knew so many amazing things were going to open up for you guys. And it's been wonderful to watch that. As we say goodbye. So first, just my deep, incredible gratitude to you, James. Deeply appreciate you on so many levels for who you are and how you show up. If you were to leave this audience with one nugget or one way to kind of summarize everything that we just dug into, which, like I said, I want to continue to have some more conversation later on, what would be something you'd want to leave this audience with as kind of a way to close this out?
Most of the people I work with are in the service-based industries. They're coaches of some kind, but whether you're a coach or not, one message I share with all my clients is that, you are your first client. Mm-hmm. And that contract is for life. And so think about how it is you communicate with the people you love the most in the world, and start seeing if you're talking to yourself like that. Especially when it comes to motivation. Like, a lot of people motivate themselves by fear and by obligation, by saying, you've got to do this, otherwise you're going to fail. And think about how you would respond if the person you love the most spoke to you like that. So, personal development really, and moving forward, is all about, it starts with you and it ends with you. It's all about your relationship with yourself. So really check in with that first client, that person that is the most important person in your life, and check how you're speaking to that person. Yeah. Once I started taking full responsibility for my own journey and empowered myself to do something about it, I started stacking the confidence and the pride shelf in my in my library, right? Which is, I talk about my past library. I stack that shelf of confidence because I give reason to, by loving myself, by giving myself reason to be motivated, not being obliged to be motivated. So just check in with that client contract for life, and just do what it is that lights you up.
Yeah. And I love that. That so is a perfect way to end this, as far as really looking at, not only are you your best client, you're your first client, you're your best friend. It's that way. And we've had, so many conversations around that opportunity for self-love, and knowing that, how would you talk to a small child? How would you talk to a stranger? Taking that opportunity to have that conversation with yourself first. And so it's a perfect way for us to close, which is really reassuring and inviting you to truly say yes to yourself first, and destroy the noise that's getting in the way, which is some of those old stories and scripts and beliefs that aren't serving. And it's really putting yourself in a space to say, am I showing up in the best and highest way possible, so that I can truly, man, I can't speak today, truly choose to show up for myself and others, truly choose to serve, and then take personal responsibility inside that space. So once again, as always, remember that leadership is a choice. It starts with how you choose to lead yourself, how you choose to support, love, honor, and have confidence in yourself. And with that, once again, thank you to my guest, James Williams, for joining us. Just a pleasure. And thank you all for joining as well. Please remember to subscribe so that you do not miss an episode of these powerhouse leaders we have, and get to engage in conversation with it. With that, make it a phenomenal day, everybody. I love you. Sending you all heart-to-heart hugs.